Hello, welcome to Rude Boy's Kitchen. I'm Rude himself, and today I'd like to share with you a dish that's one of my favorite, Shabu Shabu. It's Japanese or Korean hot pot that you make with very thin slices of meat, or you can use beef or chicken or fish, all sorts of stuff, vegetables, and I'm going to cover with you the types of equipment or gear that you need to make this thing. I'm going to cover the ingredients and prep, and hopefully I'll be able to share a dish with you that a lot of folks only enjoy in restaurants because of some of the rarity of the ingredients. Hello, welcome to the equipment or gear section of our Shabu Shabu cooking segment. As you can see next to me, I have a convection electronic hot pot, single serve. This one, they come in various sizes. This one was about $45–50, if you can see, for shabu shabu. They don't always specifically have to be for shabu shabu, but something like this that can cook the meat, boil the water or the broth, and keep it hot and going for a long period of time, something that you want. So the next piece of gear that you're probably going to need, most people are going to have, is a good sharp knife cutting vegetables. You don't need to cut the meat unless you're cutting the meat yourself. I have the pre-cut thin sliced meat, and of course a cutting board. And also, for depending on the ingredients you're going to use, you want a grater. A good grater is going to grate radishes. We grate radish for shabu shabu. And also maybe some sort of spoon with a sieve to skim some of the fat material off of the broth as you cook the meat. And you can dish this fat off into another separate bowl. Welcome again. Now on to the ingredients for our shabu shabu dish. So first off, we've got the very thinly sliced meat. I've got chicken, I've got beef, and I've got tuna. Now the tuna isn't thinly sliced, we cut it into chunks, but and you can buy this in an Asian market, specifically maybe labeled shabu shabu meat, but you can see how thinly sliced some of that is. You can see through some of it. Let me hold up a piece of chicken here for you. Piece of chicken, very thin. And what's meant to happen is when you get the shabu shabu broth going, these will cook very quickly. Usually you put the meat in for 1 to 2 minutes, and maybe the fish in for 3, and then you take it out and you'll dip it in your sauce and you'll eat it. So I've prepped the meat separately, sitting here on a plate waiting for us to use our shabu shabu. Next, what I've got over here is I've got maybe 2.5 quarts of water, and I've got a piece of kelp soaking in it. Now I picked this up at H Mart. It's I don't know if you can see the whole package, but it's basically a chunk of dried kelp, and you soak that for a 3-inch piece for about a half an hour. And then what you're going to do is you're going to transfer this water into the hot pot and maybe add some salt and a couple other things to get the broth started. You don't actually start with a beef broth. The process of cooking the meat in the hot pot is what creates the broth that you'll actually use to eat your shabu shabu soup later. Okay, over here I have other ingredients, my vegetable ingredients for the most part. Over here I've got some red radishes. I may add a couple of those and cut them up creatively. I've got some firm tofu. You want firm tofu, you can add it to your meat plate as well, and it'll absorb the flavor and you can eat that. And I've got udon noodles for later. Shiitake mushrooms. I've also got Napa cabbage, and I've got carrots. You don't want to go to the grocery store and buy the regular kind. You want to go get like some of these monsters, some like naturally grown, because what you're going to do is you're going to cut them into roughly 1/2 or 1/4 inch slices, and you're going to use a nice little creative food cutter to turn those shapes into nice pleasing flower shapes. you're going to press them into the carrots, and I'll show you later. Here's what you have here is you have a package of enoki mushrooms, and we'll take these and we'll cut them down the middle and separate them into bite-sized pieces and put them on kind of our vegetable plate. Again, another not so common ingredient. You'll get it in Asian food markets and such. Again, these are enoki mushrooms. Here I've just got a piece of Belgian cabbage, kind of substituting for other more traditional ingredients, but it'll suffice. I've also got a leek, which I'm kind of substituting for a chrysanthemum or sukkat, or what might be called moya. It's just a leek, so I have some onion base for my shabu shabu. And then over here, I've got a Korean radish, sometimes called a daikon. These are pretty short for daikons. They're usually more carrot shaped. But I'm going to peel those and I'm going to grate those, and those will be kind of an accessory that you add to your dipping sauces as you like to taste. Here we've got your traditional scallions or green onions, and those are another condiment. It's the word I was looking for. You just chop those up and you'll add them to a separate little bowl, and you can add them to your flavor as you like. Here what we got is a couple of different dipping sauces that people use for shabu shabu. On the left, you've got sesame sauce. Again, you can buy it at Asian markets. Don't get necessarily a sesame dressing. You might want to get something that more resembles a, I don't know, more like a puree. And here we have ponzu sauce. You can get it, it's usually citrusy either way, but I tend to get the stuff that has more of a lime flavor to it. It's a personal preference, but ponzu sauce. So these are the sauces that you will dip your meat into after you pull them out of the shabu shabu broth. Okay, let's start the prep. First thing, got to take the water that I've soaked the kelp in and pour it into my hot pot. So let's remove the kelp. Let's toss that into the sink. Here goes the kelpy water. Looking good. Another personal preference, a little bit of sea salt. Make a good broth. And we'll start cranking that guy up. And we'll put it on 3 for now, just let it start going. And now on to veggie prep. Alright, the first thing I'm going to prep are the shiitakes. I'm going to do so because they've kind of got a little bit of unique prep steps. First thing you want to do is you're going to remove the stems off of these bad boys. Okay. Then what you're going to want to do is you want to cut little chunks out of the top in kind of a, we'll call it a star pattern. And the reason being, 1, it's decorative. 2, it allows a lot more of the absorption of the broth. So there you see my nice little decorative star design. The stem has been cut off, and now I'm going to place it on my veggie plate. I'm going to do another one here just to show you the prep. Once again, I'm going to take a little bit of a divot. See how I'm angling the knife? Just kind of taking that divot out. Not too deep. Just a little divot out of the top. go. And there we have another nice decorative shiitake. Now we're going to prepare some red radishes. So I talked about the vegetable shapers before. I've got they come in a variety pack, and one's the bigger one I'm going to use for the carrots. Then I've got kind of a little tiny one that I'm going to use for the different radishes. So I'm going to take a radish, just cut a little bit off the top, cut a little bit off the bottom, and I'm going to cut this guy in half. And I'm going to take a little shaper, and I'm going to just cut that guy, poke him out. Now you've got a little flowery shaped radish. I'm going to set that onto my vegetable tray next to my shiitakes. And let me do a couple more here. Just going to leave this cover off and get through these. It's okay if it's not absolutely perfect, unless your guests scrutinize your cooking, in which case you should just kick them out of your house. Here we go. A couple radish. Nice flowery looking radish. And another one here. Didn't quite fit the mold, but that's okay. Looks good. And that's radishes. On to the next vegetable, also a decorative vegetable, the carrots. If I didn't say it before, all chefs should know, wash your vegetables before you cut, prepare, serve. So I'm going to take one of these bad boys, and now of course I've got the larger cutting shaping device for the carrots. I'm going to get kind of an odd sized end off of the end of that, and I'm going to cut it about 3/4 inch thick. Not too thick. I mean, the thicker obviously the longer it takes to cook. You can cut them to whatever thickness you want or whatever you think is good for your shabu. So that's about how thick it is, slightly thinner than finger width thick. And I'm going to add that to my decorative plate as well. Let me get through another one here. Trying to get even cuts. Isn't quite working out, but variety is the spice of life. Okay, so those are the carrots, and I'm going to finish up the carrots here and we'll move on to the next vegetable prep. And now the Napa cabbage, or Chinese cabbage. You want to cut the root off, and then you'll want to roughly cut it up into thirds. And I just take one bunch. If you have a preference for which chunk of the leaves you like, if you like the darker ones or if you like the lighter ones, whatever you want in your shabu. I'm also adding those to my vegetable plate. Here we have a leek in substitute for some of the other ingredients. And what you want to do with your leek is, once you cut off the end, you're going to cut it into roughly 1/4 inch diagonal pieces. That's good for the flavor. Just like that. Just right up until you get to the leaves. And then you want to add those, of course, to your vegetable plate. Here we have Belgian cabbage. Now with your vegetable plates, you can get as excessive or as conservative if you want. You know, you can have less types of vegetables. You don't have to have everything here. Do what you want. But what I'm sharing here are just some of the key ingredients that a lot of folks like to use in their shabu shabu. I'm going to take the core of that out. Just plop some of those there on my vegetable plate that I have so far. Okay, last but not least for the vegetable plate are the gnocchis, the gnocchi mushrooms. I'm just gonna take it out of the bag right there. Out of my hand, still got a little bit of dirt. You know they're good. So basically what we're gonna do here is we're gonna separate them into kind of bite-sized chunks. Just cut them in half lengthwise. A few of those on the vegetable plate. You don't have to use the whole package. You can certainly use just half. I think I'm going to use half the package here, and I'm going to save the rest and put those guys in a Ziploc for later. It's now time to prep our condiments, and we're going to start with the green onion. So just like any other scallions, we're going to chop them up. I'm going to take the roots off first, and so no one said I'm an expert cook, but I'm going to just chop these guys up into the usual size pieces. Okay, put those in my little custard dish. So I've got, if I'm going to serve guests, I can get a few of these dishes out and they can pull from their own dish. So just putting the chopped up green onions in a little dish. And a few more of those. The other thing about these green onions is while you might not use all of them during your meat eating process, while you're dipping the meat in the ponzu sauce or the sesame sauce, they're definitely useful for the soup that's made from the broth afterwards. So you want to make enough that you can enjoy both for the meat dipping as well as the after soup. The other condiment is our daikon radish here. So I'm kind of in the process of peeling one right now. These are small compared to the others. So usually so you can find some that are carrot length. I didn't want too much, so I kind of got a few small ones here. And this is kind of what the grater's for also, that I talked about earlier. So we'll get this guy peeled. Of course, watch your fingers when you peel anything. That guy set aside. Chopped. And I kind of like things rough. A little bit of skin doesn't hurt me. And we're just going to grate. Grate that right down to the nothing. Okay. I'm going to put that in another condiment dish, as you can see, very similar to our green onion condiment dish. And this isn't a terribly strong radish. It does have a radishy taste. We'll add it to their dipping bowls or dipping sauces. So you can get daikon or Korean, it'll be sometimes called, I think, radish. Okay, enough of that. Plenty there. Plenty. Alright. Anybody out there who knows me understands that I'm an equal opportunity pleaser, so I mentioned the extra firm tofu as one of the ingredients at the beginning you can use for the meat. So here I have a block of extra firm tofu. I'm going to cut it up and I'm going to put it on the meat plate. So it will absorb the vegetable broth just as much as the other pieces of meat. I'm going to cut it up in the same consistency as maybe the chunks of tuna, but I'm going to cut it up into thirds so you kind of have like a half-inch square there of the tofu to put into your shabu shabu. So maybe a third of that and a third of that, and now I have plenty of tofu squares for my meat plate. I'm going to go ahead and bring my meat plate over and sprinkle the tofu and just kind of like make it the centerpiece there. Put a few squares in there. Now if you have guests that don't like your tofu touching the meat, you can set up a separate plate, of course. So you have tofu plate, but I'm gonna shabu shabu all this stuff. And so now you see my wonderful meat plate with all the thin meats and tofu, and also the now fully prepared condiments. You've got the radish, and you've got the green onion, and of course you have the very lovely vegetable plate. We've got our shiitakes, we've got our enokis, we've got our radishes in the back underneath. You can't see them now because the enokis are hiding them. And you've got our carrots, you've got the leeks, the cabbage, and it's all ready to go. Here we are. Broth is heating up. You've got the meat plate, you've got your veggie plate, got your hot pot. By now you're like, Rude, you've shown us a lot of cool stuff. You've shown us the meat, you've shown us a little bit of prep, you showed us some cool vegetables, you've got your water heating up. How do you eat all this stuff? Well, I'm about to show you. Alright, now that I got this hot pot started up a little bit, I'm going to prep my meat dipper bowl. I've got some ponzu in there. I'm going to add just a little bit more ponzu sauce. Set that aside. I'm going to take some of my radish condiment that I grated up earlier. I just put a little splash of radish in there. Good, not too much. That's good enough. Okay, then I'm going to get some of my chopped up green onions. Add those to my meat dipping bowl. Okay. Now, there's my meat dipping bowl. Radish, green onion, ponzu. Okay. Now I'm going to take the lid off of this bad boy. Hopefully it's hot enough now. Alright. And I'm going to come over to my meat plate. You can't see it, but I'm reaching over. And I'm going to get myself a piece of beef. Come on, you. Maybe a couple pieces of beef. And it goes right in. And one thing you'll notice is that it will start to change color. It'll go from that very pink, and it'll start to kind of get a brownish or a grayish color. So you want these pieces of beef to be in there for, at least a minute. Different types of meats take different amounts of time. I usually put seafood in for a little bit longer, 2 to 3. So, and of course, shabu is the enunciation or the sound of the meat being swished around in the broth. So we'll swish ourselves around there a little bit. Make sure my temperature is just right. Again, brand new pot, so I'm playing with the temperature here, experimenting just a little bit, but that's okay. We'll give it a few more seconds. I don't know if you can see clearly, but you'll start to see some of the fat accumulate along the top. That's why I talked about that spoon sieve earlier, to kind of pull that fat off continually as you cook the meat, so that when you get to the soup time, it's not really fatty. Okay, well, I'm going to give one of these pieces of meat a quick bite. I'm going to go in there, my ponzu, and eat it. Good stuff. I think it's working. So, other things you can do while you got your meat going I'll start chucking in a little vegetable piece here and there. I've seen some places actually use broccoli as well. Broccoli is really good in shabu shabu. So let's get a shiitake in there. Maybe a little bit of a couple leeks. Some cabbage, definitely cabbage. Cabbage is, I would say, one of the staples for shabu shabu. Okay. And you just keep doing that. You'll keep eating some of the vegetables off, pulling them out, dipping in your ponzu or your sesame, whatever you like, until all the meat's gone. And of course, you can share this with others, and it's kind of fun. People can walk up to the pot, put their meat in, hang out for a minute, move on to other stuff. As far as the vegetable cooking time, it also varies. 3 to 5. Don't want to leave them in there too long, but they definitely probably need a little bit longer than the thin meat. And that's my shabu shabu. Okay, well, I hope you had a good time in my kitchen watching me prep, getting the meats. I hope you can go out there and find all the ingredients that you need to find. Look up variations online. Get yourself a hot pot, or do it in a regular pot if you can pull it off. But go out there and have a good time and enjoy your shabu shabu. This is Rude himself saying, cook on.